In the age of TikTok trends and viral superstition, few things travel faster than a spooky story. Enter the Labubu doll craze, an internet-fueled panic claiming that ancient demons like Pazuzu have somehow found their way into children's toys. Frequent viewers know that I've spoken about Pazuzu before, most recently in a video I made about the Lilitu. Imagine my disbelief that I'd be revisiting such a deity not to explore his origins and his character, but to explain why Pazuzu isn't inhabiting whatever the hell these things are. To be fair, I didn't have to make the video at all. I just couldn't stand the conceitedness of people posting stuff like this without knowing anything about the ancient stories, and probably only being aware about Pazuzu in the first place because either the Simpsons did it or because the entity was used in The Exorcist.
I am Pazuzu.
But on the flip side, I'm kind of pleased because suddenly people are interested in the old gods, which if you're new to this channel, that's pretty much our thing around here. So I thought I'd do this episode hoping to shed some light on the actual mythology behind Pazuzu, who whilst was considered by some to be a demon of wind and pestilence, was also considered to be a protector against wicked spirits. Pazuzu was a deity belonging to the Babylonians and the Assyrians sometime through the 1st century. Indeed, an evil deity, it cannot be overlooked, but not so evil that he can be adequately conflated with, say, the likes of the biblical devil. You see, Pazuzu was the entity responsible for bringing the more destructive winds upon the earth. The Mesopotamians had no way of explaining why the wind could be gentle sometimes and absolutely ruinous at other times, and so Pazuzu became an adequate means by which the weather could be understood. In fact, Pazuzu was known to be in control specifically of the southwest winds, those which brought famine during the dry season and storms during the rainy seasons. Not exactly the most favourable traits to be known for. Now, you'd be forgiven for thinking that with this notion of being the bringer of destructive winds, the Mesopotamians would surely fear him. At the very least, they wouldn't go about praying to him. But that's where you'd be wrong. You see, despite being a demonic entity with such destructive habits, he was therefore also considered to be the best entity to consult when it came to avoiding said carnage. Put simply, the Mesopotamians could invoke Pazuzu to protect them from his terrible wrath, not at all unlike how the Egyptians might have prayed to the god Set, in an effort to divert or lessen the devastation brought about by his storms. Sure, he was the one bringing about these natural calamities, but if you were on his good side, there was a chance you might have weathered the winds unscathed. But Pazuzu wasn't just responsible for these southwesterly winds, no. For the ancient Mesopotamians, Pazuzu had a much more protective role, fending off not only other wicked spirits, but also establishing himself as the main opposition towards one of the more sinister demons within the mythology, Lamashtu. Lamashtu was a deity that was believed to feed on the blood and/or flesh of infants, and was widely found to be the reason by the Mesopotamians as to why women miscarried and why cot deaths transpired. To be honest, if you wanted to blame modern day superstition on anyone, Lamashtu is probably the more applicable deity. She was believed to manifest in the night, and in a similar vein to the succubus, could even torment men in their sleep, infiltrating their dreams and killing them too. What's more, she enabled her hordes of spirits, the Lilith and the Lilitu, to hunt mankind in the very same way. Winged spirits that were also believed to carry diseases. Indeed, the common belief is that Lamashtu was a demoness, but another idea exists that as she was able to commit such transgressions on a grand scale, without the other gods getting involved to stop her, it's possible that she was a goddess herself, an evil one at least. For the Mesopotamians, it wasn't uncommon for them to take protections against Lamashtu and her minions, using amulets, talismans, and even incantation bowls, for which to trap these entities should they have ventured into their property. But when all else failed, the Mesopotamians had confidence that they could rely on Pazuzu. Perhaps in this regard, it took one wicked deity to defeat another, and that whilst Pazuzu was evil, in the sense that he brought forth the violent winds, this was an unavoidable reality, and not something he did with malice or with a particular target in mind. The same could not be said for Lamashtu, a wicked deity by definition, who hunted those who could much less defend themselves from the attacks of other men, let alone a demonic deity. It can be theorized that Pazuzu was created specifically as a counter to Lamashtu, or was at least repurposed for this undertaking. As mentioned, it's theorized that Lamashtu may not have been a demoness, considering her ability to run such amok on the earth, but that she might very well have been a goddess in her own right. Yet by the end of the Bronze Age, she was seemingly relegated to a lesser demonic classification, becoming one of her own Lilu demons. With Pazuzu emerging around the same time as this, it has been speculated that Pazuzu's role quickly changed into something more beneficial. With that being said, it was soon believed that Pazuzu had become something of an unwitting defender of the people, one who had the power to not only defeat Lamashtu, should she have ventured into a settlement, but to have actually banished her back to the underworld. In other beliefs, Pazuzu was known for catching the spirits of Lamashtu, the Lilitu and the Lilitu, by which he would rip off their wings and leave them to die. Pazuzu would become such a beacon of protection for the Mesopotamians that even his physical features alone could be enough to dissuade other spirits from bothering their property. He was often drawn with a rather dog-like face, with bulging eyes and a serpentine body, but he also had aspects of a bird's anatomy, sometimes with a beak, talons and wings. In fact, his relation to other demons may give you some indication as to how terrifying he may have appeared to people, for in some texts he is detailed as being the nephew of Humbaba, the very same Humbaba found in the Epic of Gilgamesh, who was known to have been so fiendish and so monstrous that even the heroes Gilgamesh and Enkidu come to fret over him. Much of his role in various protective rituals is found within inscriptions on the backs of his statues, consisting of spells, incantations, as well as various artifacts that could be worn to gain his favour. Large Pazuzu heads have been uncovered, usually from terracotta, which possess various loops and holes that allow for them to be worn as necklaces, usually perceived to have been typically worn by pregnant women, hoping to ward away Lamashtu and her evil spirits, and thus ensure she did not miscarriage. Associating demons to dolls isn't anything new, it's something that's demonstrated in many different cultures around the world, not just in Christianity. Some believe that the human aspect of the dolls allow for them to serve as vessels for wandering souls who weren't able to leave this plane, whilst others see them as tools capable of harbouring energies that can turn out to be malevolent. I mean, I get it. Some dolls are just creepy looking, and if any inanimate object in your house is going to get possessed by something, it probably would be a doll. I mean, no one's ever been haunted by a chair or a kettle before, right? I know others can associate dolls and other collectibles with idols and warn of the danger and risk they possess in being put before God, but from my understanding, as long as one isn't worshipping these items, then it's generally okay to have them. But of course, others, including many parents on TikTok from what I can see, are worried that the Lububu dolls are generally demonic and have some kind of insidious effect on the household. Can this be verified beyond anecdotal accounts? Well, first we can dismiss the supernatural aspect around these dolls by understanding exactly where they came from. These are not some antiques that were discovered at the bottom of the Dead Sea. No, they were designed by Hong Kong-based artist Kassing Lung, who stated that the design was inspired by Nordic mythology, further elaborating that these creatures were based off of elves. Since then, religious influencers began expressing concern about these origins, noting that Nordic folklore is a part of pagan culture, and therefore demonic. With that, you can join the dots to see why some religious folk have shunned the Labubu dolls, and has further given credence to the ideas that these dolls are evil. Such a belief isn't new to Labubu dolls. Many communities had a problem with Harry Potter when it first released because it promoted witchcraft and other communities had problems with Pokemon because it promoted evolution. So where does Pazuzu fit in all of this? Well, disappointingly, I found out about a now deleted TikTok video that depicts an image of a Lububu doll and an AI generated image of a generic demon, meant to represent Pazuzu. The user suggested that there was a relation between the two, pretty much declaring that the Labubu dolls were based on Pazuzu. This seems to be from where it all started, with many other users seeing this, believing it was legit, and then reposting it with warnings and various bits of advice. As we can see though, we know that Pazuzu looked nothing like this depiction. To be honest, it looks like they've just ripped off how I normally display demons in my videos with that parchment paper background. But anyway, we have actual evidence of Pazuzu's iconography. We know he had bird-like talons, wings, and a more animalistic face, and to be honest, I think if they had just used a more authentic image of him, they might have been more successful in spreading whatever propaganda they were trying to spread. What strikes me about this is, why Pazuzu? I mean, this person could have picked any demon from any time period. Why someone as obscure and ancient as Pazuzu? Well, I consider two reasons. The first is that Pazuzu serves as the main antagonist in the Exorcist movie, which would have done a lot in raising the entity's profile, in the same way it's done recently for the likes of the demons Valak, Moloch, and Paimon. The second reason comes from the Simpsons' Treehouse of Horror 28, where we see Homer get a last-minute gift from Maggie of an idol of Pazuzu that ends up possessing her. Ironically, it's actually a pretty well-researched episode. We know that these sorts of items were and still are being found in dig sites across the Mesopotamian regions, and they even make some pretty relevant jokes.
Wait, so you're not even as powerful as the South Wind or the West Wind? How lame is that?
But we know from the ancient texts that Pazuzu didn't possess people. Probably wouldn't have possessed a child, seeing as he'd spent so much time chasing away Lamashtu on their behalf. It's therefore possible that the original poster saw one of these two examples and then just ran with it. It's also possible that they thought Pazuzu sounds like Labubu and just went with the phonetic similarity, but who knows. Unfortunately, it's led some people to actually believing them, and so hopefully they'll make their way around to this video at some point and understand that Pazuzu isn't as bad as you might seem at first. I mean, don't get me wrong, that's still a creature capable of mass devastation if he was to actually manifest, but at least you know he's probably not going to be lurking around in some weird looking overpriced dolls. In any case, let me know your thoughts about today's episode, and as always, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss my next upload. Until next time.